and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we have a very special guest named Elaine, and she is going to talk to us about an incredibly traumatic experience she had as a special education teacher. And she's going to talk to us about why she ultimately decided to transition out of the traditional classroom and into a new role within education. But before we get there, Elaine, I would love to hear what initially got you interested in being a special education teacher.
Well, I have a son that has autism, and so I had to learn a lot to help my son. And when my son started school, they needed substitute teachers. So I signed up to be a substitute teacher, and I worked primarily at his school, and it worked out. And I was able to be there. And then, my son would get off school, and he was right there where I was working. So it was convenient. And I worked in a lot of different classrooms, and I volunteered. And I worked in a few SPED classes, and I really enjoyed it. I was working with nonverbal kids. I was working with kids with Down syndrome, and we had one student that had Tourette's, and he had a one-on-one aide. But he was great. He had that one-on-one aide, and if he needed to go out, because he was upset about something, that the one-on-one aide could go take him for a walk, and then he'd be okay and come back in, and everyone worked as a team. And that's the kind of aspect I liked about it. I'm all about teamwork, and I'm all about, I'm very good with small groups, and I'm kind of an introvert. So actually, SPED just seemed to be perfect for me. And that's why I got into SPED.
All right. So you had this passion for teaching and working with children with special needs, and all of a sudden you're thrust into the classroom in the real world. What was that like? Did you feel like your teaching program prepared you for what you would experience in the classroom?
Very little was devoted to students with emotional problems. And so it was something that it was almost like it was just like a little blurb about it. And it wasn't like the main thing of what we were learning. But now, since I've been in a classroom, I guess they need to change it all, because it looks like these type of kids now are dominant. They're dominant. Every SPED teacher I've ever talked to always had a student like this in their classroom now. It's almost standard. And to be able to get one of those really violent, emotionally disturbed students out of your class, it takes anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. You have to document and prove that you tried all these different strategies, and before you can have another meeting to get that kid removed out of your class into a more restricted environment. And that is the big issue with a lot of SPED teachers. That really is hard for them. You have a dangerous kid that's escalating, and you have to quickly get the other kids out, and they're losing out on their education, and you're sitting there babysitting this kid because you can't get a hold of their parents, or the parents don't want to come and pick them up. And so your day is wasted. So then you're doing your work at night, writing IEPs, and that was my life. That's a lot of SPED teachers' lives. All of their work is done after school hours and on weekends and holidays.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious to learn more about some of the behaviors you saw within your SPED classroom, because I know in modern times, a lot of behavioral problems have been relabeled as a child having special needs. And so special education teachers are seeing different behaviors than they would have maybe 30 years ago. So can you kind of tell us about what some of the behaviors are like that are now mixed into the special ed classroom?
Okay, I'll just tell you about my students. I had about 3, okay, that were really bad. And they didn't want to do work. Everything would set them off. Sometimes they would come to school off the bus just angry and ready to fight and battle you. And all you're doing is hey, you're trying to be positive, trying to build a relationship, and that's all fine. But then when it comes to giving them work to do, which we have to do, we're a school, they don't want to do their work. So then they escalate and start getting angry. And what do? They throw a chair at you, they knock over their desk, and they throw a tantrum for almost an hour. And you have to de-escalate them. And then if you're able to finally get a hold of the parents, it takes, the parents won't come and get them, and the principal won't suspend them, give them an out of school suspension unless they really hurt you. They have to physically abuse you, or they have to really destroy a lot of the school property. One student, he ripped off the oh, what do you call it? The thermostat off the wall. He punched holes in the wall and he ripped off cupboard doors and threw them at us. I mean, I got really good at like ducking and just walking on eggshells. And I automatically knew, okay, he's gonna escalate. I knew like it was a daily thing. We got really professional at moving our other students out of the way really quick. Yeah, we're so lucky. We are so lucky that we didn't get hit in the head with a chair or a desk. I'm so lucky I didn't get stabbed with the light bulbs he broke or bludgeoned with this like chrome armrest. I mean, it was seriously terrifying. And he only got suspended if he like hit us.
Wow.
Yeah.
And have you had experiences where you actually were physically attacked by students?
Yes, I was punched in the face and my glasses broke. And my nose wasn't bleeding or anything, but all I was doing was he's in a divider. They didn't even give us a normal calm down room. We just had this flimsy divider. And it seemed like he was quieting down finally. So I just peeked over to go, okay, are you okay now? And like, and then like, bam, he just got up and he had a smile on his face when he did it and he punched me right in the face. It was really quick. And I was just like, my glasses, I was hit so hard, they flew across the room, they got broken. And I had to tape them together because I'm badly nearsighted. If I don't have my glasses, like I'm almost like I'm blind. And his parents have had to come get him eventually. They came and got him. And this was like when he hit me, it was probably after 4 months of dealing with him, always escalating every day. And I wrote in my questions, my answers to you that the dad said to me, I don't apologize for my son. When I said, your son's hurting us and you don't seem to care, because every time the parents would come, he had either pinched us or punched us or did something or kicked us. And the parents just didn't seem to care. It was like really weird. They were so nonchalant. It was like they were just picking him up for a dental appointment or something. Like, and they see our room and everything. They see my glasses are broken. No sorry, no nothing. And I'm like, you don't care that he's hurting us. So I say that. And the principal was mad at me when I said that. I could tell by the look on his face. But I had to say it. I was just tired of this. And I was tired that they didn't care. And so the dad says to me, he's all, I don't apologize for my son. And he's all, he doesn't respect women anyway. And he said that in front of his wife. And he said that in front of the principal. And I was shocked. And later on, I got written up by the principal because I got written up for being rude to the parent by asking that question. It just drove me nuts, Trish. I was like, has the world gone crazy? Like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. Well, that was really interesting. I don't have really any training on, special education protocols or anything like that. So what do they teach you guys to do with students like that? What is their like philosophy or theory about what you're supposed to do in situations like that?
Oh my God, let me tell you. Okay, I kept asking for months. I'm like, I need a separate calm down room that's empty of stuff. And the principal dragged his feet and he finally gets me a room, but he doesn't empty it of the stuff. There was so much stuff in there that he tried to hit me and the behavior specialist with and throw at us that we had to quickly escape and get out of the room so many times and then hold the door so he wouldn't escape and get out and try to hurt other people or run off. And the principal just didn't get it. I don't know what he was thinking, but anyways, so the behavior specialist, she tried her best, but the things that she suggested I do didn't help. It was all about trying to find ways to de-escalate him, trying to find ways for him to calm down so that he can do work. And basically it was stuff like she drew like some kind of maze on the ground with like tape. And she's all, he could walk this maze or whatever they want to call it. And then she put up like these little hand things. She made really great things and laminated them. They looked really cute. But they're all the stuff about him calming down. It worked on our autistic kids that are normally well behaved. They love that stuff, like doing walking back and forth and doing hand presses. She did all kinds of weird stuff like that. And then the rewards were like, well, he needs more rewards sooner. So it was like I had like a bag of like Skittles or M&Ms, and every time he did a math problem, I was supposed to give him a Skittle or an M&M. That's supposed to help. It didn't help. It didn't, none of the stuff worked on him. And that's because he doesn't have consequences at home for behaving bad. And so there's no incentive. And he didn't even like some of the prizes that I had for the prize box. I'd spend so much money on prizes, and it was like they weren't good enough. It was just like, okay, well, I'm sick and tired of this. I didn't know what else to do. And so the rest of the year was just surviving. And then eventually I got lucky. Like I'd already put in my notice by like March, and like that I wasn't going to continue. And anyways, it was just surviving. And then his parents and them, they split in the middle of the night. Just suddenly they left town. Yeah.
That's wild. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, with students like him, could he talk to you and explain how he was feeling, or was he nonverbal? How did that part go?
No, he wasn't. Okay, this is the thing. He wasn't autistic. He wasn't nonverbal anything. He apparently just he moved to Texas from Arizona, which is actually a state I lived in for 12 years. That's where I did my first teaching. And anyways, his parents moved to Texas, and we didn't have any of his information from the prior school. So we were kind of like trying to guess like what was wrong with him. And eventually, by the time when we get the records from the school, it was just basically stuff saying that he has emotional disability and stuff like that. And I guess his parents got him back after he was in foster care for a while. So I don't know. He had some kind of traumatic childhood, obviously. I mean, he was in 4th grade when I got him. And so that was all that was in there. And that we had to make a behavior intervention plan for him to try to get him to do work, and also to listen to us the first time when we get directives, to listen to directives from the teacher, like things like that. Those were his goals. And he cussed at us every day, and he called us F and bitchs. I don't know if you have to take that, but he cussed at us like every day. And he was just filled with anger like all the time. And it was like he also got counseling like twice a week. And I talked to the counselors, and they're like, he's hopeless. All the parents don't want to get counseling too. And they offered the parents like low cost counseling, and they flat out refused it. They didn't want it. So I don't know what else we can do, but there's anger there, and he came from a bad home, and I don't know what else I can do, but I do know one thing, and I'm a parent. When your kid has problems, you need to go get help too. To help your kid. If you really care about your kid and want to do better as a parent, you would go get help too, to help yourself to deal with your kid. But it was like the parents were checked out, and they wanted to leave it all to us. They want us to deal with their kid. And it's like, I can't fix these kids' problems because I'm not the one that created these problems. You guys did that, or like the foster care or whatever. But I'm just a teacher. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. My expertise is like learning disabilities and strategies to help students like learn better. And that's out of my scope of expertise, and I'm just being honest.
No, I can totally relate. I actually did have one student like that before, and it's kind of eerie. It's almost an identical situation. He came to the school a little bit late. We didn't have any information from his previous schools. He was in the foster care system, and this was one of the most frightening students I've ever had. He would throw desks, he would destroy bulletin boards, he would rip apart
Yes.
classrooms, he would have meltdowns. I mean, he would just go bananas. And it was almost a similar situation where they were like, I don't know what's wrong with this kid. Let's find a label for him.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of these things that I think they just kind of would try. The best that they could do was try a buddy room system. And that's where they would put him with, I want to say it was the third grade teacher. And we were in an elementary building that was, first through sixth grade. So the
Yeah.
sixth grader would go in with the third grade teacher and he would just kind of sit in the back and lay his head down. But this was another situation where, we could kind of talk with him and reason with him, but I think he figured out very quickly that he could do whatever he wanted to do, because he didn't act like this the first few weeks, but it was almost like he was testing the water, and he got to see
Yes.
he could be the star, he could tear things apart, he could terrorize everyone, and nothing was going to happen to him except for maybe getting sent to the third grade classroom where he could sleep. And so I just kind of wonder if this is a really common issue with these kids with various behavior issues that are just kind of being given a label and they just kind of throw it at SPED and say, hey, you do something with that.
Yes, you're right. It's exactly right. And what you're describing, like how he was great for the first few weeks. And we now, as all SPED teachers will tell you that, it's the honeymoon period. Wait till you start actually trying to get them to do work. And that's when all the behaviors started. As soon as we had work that he needed to do, he just wouldn't do it. The only way he would do work is either me or one of the aides had to sit with him and read what it was, and then he'd answer it, and we had to write it down for him. Or he'd do math problems in his head, and then we would write the answers. So he wasn't a stupid kid. He was very smart. He just was good at manipulating the adults around him, and he knew he didn't have to work. His parents surely didn't care whether or not he was doing work. So, there's nothing else we can do at that point. Nothing I tried worked. I can't do anything else when the parents aren't willing to help you, or the admin's not willing to take a stand and have a tough talk with the parents. Like, hey,
So I'm curious, did you have a lot of other students like this between the different buildings you worked at, or was it more of a situation where you'd sporadically have a really difficult student and the rest would be kind of okay? How did that work out?
Well, in my first, I wrote a book about my first experiences as a first-year student teaching, and I lasted 2 months. I had a really bad student, and so I wrote about it in my book. But every day he was a similar type of student. He wouldn't do any work. I could rarely get a hold of the dad, and when I did, the dad didn't care. The dad would go off on me and yell at me. And anyways, there was nothing I could do, and I'd had a part-time para. She was gone a lot doing other things, so it was just me and this kid. And it was just him for the first few weeks. But as soon as I got other kids added into my classroom, and he was no longer the center of attention, it was the exact same thing. He wouldn't do any work. And if he didn't want to do any work, he wouldn't just sit there and be quiet and read a book or anything. He would constantly get in the way and undermine my teaching, so I couldn't teach the other students. And we had a behavior specialist, and I assumed I would call her for help when I'm overwhelmed and I'm the only one in there, so that I could work with the other students and educate them and do what I need to do. And she would come and get my good kids. She wouldn't have anything to do with that kid. And I'm thinking, why is she here at this school? I was so confused. So she would always take my good students, and so I'd have to bring the stuff with her to the basket, and they didn't need anything. They were good. They would do their work. And I had to watch this kid 24/7. It was like babysitting. I got no work done during the day. So when I had to do work on students' goals, because every year you have to write new goals, and these students, you have to have it all ready for the meeting. You have to send out all the notifications to the parents and the other people that need to be at the meeting. Again, I was doing my work at home, and I never got a lunch break. And if I needed to use the restroom, I had to call somebody to come to my class for just a few minutes so I could go use the restroom. It was terrible. Yeah. And after 2 months of that, I couldn't take it anymore. And I quit. I left and I went back to being a para. I worked with a student that had a traumatic brain injury, and I finished out the year there. And then I was going to try again to get another teaching job. So I was starting to go like, okay, well, maybe I got to be really more selective about what sped job I'm going to apply for.
Yeah.
But no, you're always going to get one of those kids. They'll put them in your class. I talk to other people. It's the same everywhere. They always get a kid like that.
And I know just from reading zillions of comments, there will be like one person that's thinking, oh, Elaine, that's so
Oh,
mean. They
yeah.
can't
I
help
know.
themselves. How do you express to people that have those concerns the difference between a behavior problem and a genuine situation where a child cannot control his actions?
Okay, well, first off, I'm a parent and my son's going to be a senior next year. And my son has autism, okay? And I knew nothing about that. But I learned all that I could to help him. And my son is doing great. He's thriving. He's never been in SPED classes. He was really, he was able to read by the time he was in kindergarten. My son, there's different things that I learned, strategies and techniques. So if I needed to go to the grocery store or whatever, I always brought him with me. And I made it very clear my expectations. I go, I need to do the grocery shopping. You can help me. You behave, you'll get your little treat that you want. And that worked. I ever since my son was a little kid, like I was there for him. And I was teaching him, I took him everywhere so he learned how to behave. And there was like a few times where I needed to put him in timeout when he wasn't behaving how he's supposed to. But my son always knows that I love him.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I always say, like, your behavior, it wasn't great today. You can't act like that out in public. It doesn't matter what you have. There's expectations. When we go out in the world, we have to be kind to each other. We have to be nice. We have to be polite. Mm-hmm. And just because some kid has a disability doesn't mean that they don't have to learn to behave and have social skills. That is just nonsense. Oh, they're disabled. They don't have to do. No, you have to set expectations as a parent, about behaviors. And there's so many kids out there with disabilities that are wonderful, that behave well and are great. I worked with one nonverbal girl who wasn't in school before, and she bit me. She had empathy still. After she bit me, it was over something because I couldn't let her go outside and go swing because it was a rainstorm, and she didn't know about thunder and lightning. Mm-hmm. And yes, she bit me. But the thing is after she bit me, she felt bad, and she looked at my arm and kind of touched it, and I knew she had empathy and she felt bad. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what disability you have. There's wonderful people out there with disabilities that are great, wonderful, kind people. These kids with these bad behaviors where they're violent and filled with anger, that has nothing to do with the disability. All of those kids that I experienced that were like that, they had similar backgrounds. They, at a young age, were in foster care, or they had parents that neglected them, were abusive, were drug addicts, and they didn't spend any time teaching them. They're just left to do whatever, and they're not they don't learn social skills or stuff like that. The problem is with those parents, and the kid doesn't have a disability. It's behavior's learned, and it's learned at home. And so they can say whatever they want, but I'm a mother. My son's almost gone and out of the house, and they're not gonna say anything to try to make me feel bad or think differently, because I know I took so many classes on human development. The first 5 years of a child's life are the most important years, and that's where they learn self-regulation. That's how they learn socialization, all the things that they need to do before they start school to be successful in school and to be good at socializing and getting along with other people. They learn before they start school, or they should. And the sad part is these kids that I encountered that are violent, it's the parents. the parents weren't there for them and nurturing and taking care of them the way they should have in their early years.
Yeah. Thank you for
That's
saying
it.
I agree with you, Elaine. And I do think that there's just so much controversy in this day and age because I think a lot of these same issues are just kind of all over education. So, in one scenario, they might say, oh, this person has a learning disability. In another context, they might say, oh, they have poverty or they have some form of depression and that's why they can't behave. And so, it's just so baked into education at this point. I almost feel like any kid could do anything and a little admin will pop up or little parents will pop up and say, here's the laundry list of reasons why you can't expect my kid to behave. And so it's getting increasingly dangerous and scary for teachers to tell the truth and say, there's more going on here and we have to hold kids accountable.
Yeah, and their parents. Their parents have to be accountable too. And I was so glad to hear, like in the news, the two parents that were held accountable. There was a story when my last year of teaching was like in the, it was in 2022. The school year was ending. We had Uvalde, that shooting that happened down in Texas. And anyways, and then I heard about the teacher that got shot. She's from Virginia. And the only thing that saved her is she put her hand up and the bullet went through her hand. It was a little small Taurus handgun. Well, the teacher and other students saw the kid with the gun on the school, like at recess, and the vice principal didn't want to check the kid's pockets. He said, how can he has small pockets, there can't be a gun in there. Well, the kid had the gun and he shot the teacher, and thank God she's alive. But the mom didn't have the gun locked up, and I guess the cops found out and she got held accountable. Then there's the other story. I can't remember where that happened, but it was somewhere maybe near Michigan or something, where the parents bought their 15-year-old kid an assault rifle or something, and he's not supposed to have something like that. I'm glad that they went to jail. I'm glad that one mom had to serve some time in jail for not putting a handgun, away, locked up. They are responsible. You're responsible for what your kid does. If they're underage, you are.
Yeah.
And then the kids that go and do these shootings, I've read a lot of studies on that, and a lot of them have similar backgrounds. They have parents that aren't engaged with them. They have had traumatic maybe backgrounds, and they don't feel like anyone loves them. But then they have parents that like will bond with them over guns, or like buy them a gun, or the kids somehow get into like having guns, and the I had no idea he had guns. They're like, what type of parents are you? How do you not know what your kid is doing? But there's some people that are checked out. And you know what? I'm sorry, but you're responsible. You're responsible for what your kid does. And so if your kid goes and shoots up a school, it's your fault. And I don't care once they reach like an adult age, what type of home did you provide for your kid that made your kid act in that way? You have some responsibility.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think another way that this bad behavior is rewarded is that students really can't get kicked out of school these days. And so parents know that, they're very acquainted with their rights and how, my child has a right to education and it's not costing the parents anything. And so they just know that they can kind of have free babysitting a lot of times, and their kid can terrorize the school. They're not going to have to pay damages most of the time. They're not going to even have to apologize. So
no, they don't have to apologize. No one bought my glasses. I had to buy them myself. All the stuff that they had to get fixed at the school when he punched holes in the wall or took down that thermostat, or just the lighting he wrecked. They had this under the counter lighting. He pulled that apart. I mean, he really destroyed a lot of things, and the parents didn't have to pay for it. He didn't have to clean up the mess. Me and the janitors had to clean it up, or me and the paras would always clean it up. And that's not right. They have to learn some responsibility for their actions. And the sad part is they're not.
It's kind of interesting because I've been on a true crime kick a little bit too much, watching all these stories. And I can't help but wonder what's going to happen when these kids are unleashed on society because they are not being socialized or trained. They're being trained that they could hurt people and have little to no
Yeah.
consequences because they have some kind of diagnosis. It is really scary because I do feel like the only place that they will end up is prison unless something dramatic happens. And so it just is so disturbing that school
Yeah.
could be a place potentially with the help of parents that could help these kids, but that they're just actually getting these horrible habits reinforced for the future.
They are. And I don't know, like, what some of these kids' futures are, but I can imagine just on all the studies I read on like school shooters, it's kind of the same. They have the same backgrounds. So as long as this kid continues on and there's no consequences for their behavior and they're able to get really good at manipulating the people around them, they're going to get really good at crime and like that's their future. And the sad part is innocent people may end up getting killed. They may go to a school and shoot up a school, and it worries me all the time because here in Texas, in our school district, just this past semester at two different schools, they found guns. Kids brought guns to school. We have gun sniffing dogs that go around to the schools, and we had some close calls, and that I think about that all the time.
Mhm. Me too. Curious, did you end up finding anything rewarding about teaching, in the traditional K through 12 building? Because it does sound like very just depressing and demoralizing and stressful. And honestly, it sounds like it would take away a lot of the joy and what you were hoping to experience when you became a teacher.
Yeah, but not all the I mean, aside from these traumatic experiences with these students, I did have other kids in my classroom that were such good kids. And the only thing I feel bad about is I had a couple kids that every time this kid escalated and threw stuff, they were scared. They were scared. They were worried. And they didn't understand why this kid was acting like this and then why he got to stay like nothing happened. And I was able, to try to just be there for the kids that weren't, having problems, just doing the best I can to make them safe.
Mhm.
I was always constantly like hyper vigilant, hyper aware, like, okay, we need to get the other kids out. The only thing I cared about at that moment is I just wanted the other people in my care around me. I just wanted to make sure they were safe first. The other
Mhm.
kids and the paras, and then yes, of course myself because I have a son that still needs me. But I worked with, not all the kids were bad, but it's hard when you have this student every day like this. It does rob you of your joy because some of the best times I had, and this will sound really sad, were when these kids weren't there. When they were gone and they were like suspended for the day or the week, it was actually a nice classroom environment. And I got to do what I love, which is help my students, learn to read, learn certain math, fractions, whatever, that they need help with. And then when they got it made me so happy. It just was great. I loved it. But then the kid would come back and it would go back to how it was, like a dysfunctional type of environment. It was very toxic and it was awful.
It sounds rough. I'm kind of curious how things worked with academics. Did you feel like you had students that were capable of doing their work and just kind of chose not to because they knew they'd be passed? How did that dynamic work out?
Yeah, well, the kids, those three kids that I'm talking about that I had that were violent, academically they were smart, They didn't want to write, but if I asked a question, or I read something to them, they understood and they would answer the question. There's no excuse. They were doing I had general ed curriculum. The only thing I did is like with some of my students, like I had a student that she was a visual learner. So when I did fractions with her and stuff, I had to use fraction tiles, but she ended up getting the concept. It was just, we were given regular curriculum, but then we tailor the lessons to, their learning style. And these boys that had these, violent outbursts and didn't really want to work, I had them doing all kinds of other stuff sometimes. I tried to do more hands-on learning. So I had these snap circuit sets where they could snap them together, and it would either turn on a light or make a sound or stuff like that. And they could do things like that, and they would build stuff with Legos. I mean, amazing things when we had downtime. And I tried to encourage them that way, but they just didn't want to do the academics. They just, that they didn't care about. I just did my best. That's all I can say. And I'm not going to beat myself up anymore. I felt really bad when I left. I felt like a failure. I felt like not a good person. I didn't feel like I was good enough, even though I had other students that I was able to help. I helped one student go from a kindergarten reading level to 2 levels up, and she was a 3rd grader. And that's amazing that I was able to do that. But most of the time I just, I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt really bad about myself. I was really low. And so that's why, I just started writing my book, because I think I needed it. I needed to get it all out so that I could just be done with it and just move on.
I'm curious what the support was like among other teachers. Did you feel like they had your back and understood and supported you? What was
No.
that like?
No, I wrote about it in my book. Like, the first teaching job I got, I had one teacher next to me. She hated me. She hated my student. I don't blame her. He would make such loud noise. Like, one time he would just slam the door over and over again. And here she's like a little reading specialist. So she has little kids that come in, and she's, trying to, do her little lessons with them. What she has this loud kid yelling cuss words, the F word and everything, and slamming our door. And I'm trying, to get the other kids out so then I could get him in a corner. And she would come in, she would just be like, "You just let your kids do everything. You only have 5 students." And she would get on my case about classroom management and stuff and everything. She didn't understand. She wasn't a nice person. And I mean, she was with a clique. There's also little cliques when you work at certain schools. You'll see like a bad girl clique. They're the popular teachers, and they're all great and good looking, and all their classrooms look perfect. They look, like you're shopping like at a high-end boutique store. They're like really nice. And then my classroom, because the type of students I have, like, they're violent and they rip things up. My classroom looked like a yard sale or a thrift store. I didn't try to make it nice anymore. There was no point. And I just felt judged, and I felt like no one understood what I was going through. They didn't know. They didn't understand. So
So it sounds like that's a lot of isolation in addition to all the things you're
yeah,
going through, and not having parent support, and not having admin
yeah,
support, and not having a
yeah,
behavioral specialist get your kids that needed it. That is rough.
yeah.
It's a wonder that you were able to finish that second year, because that sounds like a miserable experience.
Yeah, the second year ended up being a lot worse than the first year. When I worked that first time in Arizona, it was 2 months, and then I left because that was that kid that, he would slam the door and cuss and stuff, and I didn't have an aide that was full time in there, and the admin wouldn't get a one-on-one for me to have in there. It was just hopeless. So I left after 2 months, and then when I went to Texas, I thought, well, maybe things will be different here. My husband, his job moved us here. So I studied to take the test and get certified in Texas. And it took me a while to get a job because, I'm not from Texas. I'm originally from California, and they don't really like people from California. And anyways, but I finally got my job, and I was like, oh, this is great. I'm so excited. I'm so happy. And then it ended up being far worse than my experience back in Arizona. So then I was saying, maybe God doesn't really want me to be a teacher. Maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. But I always did love writing. Ever since I was a little kid, I always wrote stories. I always told stories. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. But I do have my day job because I haven't made it yet. I'm not Stephen King. But I do have to thank Stephen King, though. He helped me. It took me 6 years to write this book. It was really hard because I was traumatized, but then I was so sad, and I just felt, I wasn't. What am I good at doing now? What am I going to do with my life? I wasted my life. And then, and then you have student debt. I got to pay that. So I worked subbing, working as a para, and then just somehow I got into the transition program. And so I'm in my second year here and I love it. And I love the teacher I work with. And I kind of think like this is where I need to be because I feel like now I'm finding my confidence again. And
that's such a redemptive story that you were able to use your passions to have an outlet with students that appreciate you and that you don't have to have some of the same pressures and all of the mountains of paperwork and like admin crawling all over you. It's like, that's so great. That's so rare to find a nice little place in education that's almost like a safe space. Can you tell us more about what you do every day for your job?
Okay, so what I do every day, I love the program I'm in. It's called My Career Connections. And I work with the teacher. She's great. She's a SPED teacher, Miss Smiley. She's been doing it for 15 years. And every day, like our students wear uniforms except for Friday. So like on Monday, they'll wear like tan pants and a white shirt. On Tuesday, alternates, they'll wear a black shirt and the tan pants. And it's all basically a class around them learning everything they need to learn to live independently and to get a job. And they get to job sample, they call it. So we have different companies and restaurants and things that our teacher was able to work with them to say, hey, we have a couple kids that could use some job skills. They have special needs. Do you mind if we come like on a certain day, like for 2 hours and do cleaning or whatever you need? And a lot of these businesses are lucky to have us. They love to have us there. So we'll go on a bus. We have our own school bus provided from the district. And every different day we have a schedule where we go. So for one semester, like every day we have something different. Like we go to the Humane Society, we go to Chili's, we go to Walgreens, Walmart. Our kids do facing. That's where they straighten the shelves. We do stocking. They clean, they gather the carts, anything that needs to be done, we do. And us as the job coach, I just demonstrate and model. And then I'm like, yeah, now you can put out all these things. Now you know how to face. And then I check on them. And then, that's what we do. And then when they're in the class, we watch videos about how to behave at a job and how to work well with others, so they learn soft skills and teamwork. And we also cook in the class. We also they do laundry and they learn to fold things and peel potatoes and just all kinds of stuff. And it makes them feel so good about themselves. And they're like, yeah, I can do a lot of things. Yeah, I can get a job. So we have a few kids that actually went and got jobs. We have one girl who works as a para in a preschool, and she worked originally just like a couple weeks as just a helper and a volunteer, and eventually she got the job, and so she's working as a para. And we have another student that's a bagger at the local grocery store, and I see him every week. I love him. I'm like so happy for him. He's been working there for 3 years. And then we have another student that got a job at a pizza place, and it just makes us feel so proud and so happy. So I love it. We work as a team, and I work with 4 other paras because we have a lot of students. We have like 28. And anyways, so we do it all together and we love it. We're doing great. We're like a big happy family.
That is amazing. I kind of wonder why there could not be schools like what you're describing, but all based on behavior to help some of the students that you were mentioning earlier that really broke down the basics of behaving in a really, really tightly regulated, really safe atmosphere. Have you ever seen or heard of anything like that? Because it seems like that's almost what they need at this point.
You're talking about the kids that have the behavior problems. Mm-hmm. Well, I do have to say that um, I know of one program in Arizona that worked really good for kids like that. And I actually worked for a little while as a para in there because they had a para that was out. She got surgery. And so I worked there for a while. And it was a great program because it was very structured. They used Boys Town, which is some kind of curriculum that was invented by a Catholic priest like 100 years ago. I guess he used to work with boys that had behavior problems. And it is a really good program. And when students like tear up a room or something, the teacher leaves it as a mess how it is. And when they calm down, they have to like pick up and put back in order what they messed up.
Yeah.
And then also they are denied certain privileges. They can't shop for a week or 2 weeks, depending on the severity of what they did. And they have to write letters of apology, and they have to apologize in person to the people that they hurt. And it was a self-contained classroom, and the teacher that ran it, she didn't have like anyone like an admin like getting on her case about why don't you have your objectives posted? Why don't you have these anchor charts posted for that? You know, like you'll like I used to get visited by teachers. I mean, admin like, oh, she has no anchor charts. Well, they got tore down. I don't have like I don't have like my schedule up because they tore it down and ripped it up. I mean, come on, I have these students that are angry in a rage and they destroy my stuff. Like, of course, I don't have anything up anymore. But her classroom, she didn't have that type of interference. And I think she also had a thing on there. She had an expectation of behaviors that the parents had to sign. So the parents had to be on board too with what she was doing in the class. And I think that's what made her class a little bit better. Her students weren't like hurting anyone severely. And she had a calm down room, a proper calm down room that had padding and everything that was within the classroom. But like she could, me and the other para, we would just, you know, be there as the kids in the calm down room, watching him until he, you know, eventually calms down. But it doesn't interfere with the kids. She was able to continue her lesson, and they aren't hearing his cuss words and swear words. It was great. That's the only thing I saw that actually looked like it was working.
Yeah.
But she wasn't having anyone breathing down her neck telling her what to do. She didn't have parents like interfering with how she was running the class and the rules and expectations she set up. And that's what I think is going to work for kids like that.
Yeah. Well, this has been so interesting. I'm kind of curious, is there anything that you wish the general public knew about a special education teacher's job that they're just like not getting?
Well, special education teachers, we work the hardest, and I'll tell you, because most of the time we're going to get students like that. All of us, all the sped teachers I've ever talked to had nightmare students like this in their class, and they've had to, you know, manage the behavior until this kid calms down, and then like they have to work at night. You have to keep data. You're keeping data on all your students. It's not just that one student you're dealing with. You have to keep data on them. You have to, you know, write new goals for them. You have to explain how like they met this goal, and you have to have the data to back it up. And you're juggling constantly. I had students that I have to know all their schedules because some kids have to get so many minutes a month of OT, occupational therapy, or they have to get speech therapy, or I'm writing down, they have to get so many minutes of counseling. And I'm having to keep track of all this stuff. And then I'm having to delegate work to the paras. And then, you know, you have to call parents when things go wrong and there's bad behavior. You have to call the parents and let them know. And then you have to update the parents on what's going on in the classroom and what the kids need to bring, or it's a half day, you know, what time they need to get picked up, or when the bus is going to get them, or if the bus doesn't come and pick them up, I have to stay after school and call up the bus barn and go, "Where's the bus?" They haven't picked up my student. I mean, there's so much going on. And then you do duties around the school. Like I had to do lunch duty, And I had to go early before school starts. In the cold, I had to be like the crossing guard, and then if they're low on subs and they don't have subs, I have to use a planning period to watch someone else's class because they didn't have a sub that day because there's a shortage of subs. I mean, and you get exhausted and you get tired out, and you're constantly working. You're working on the weekends, you're working after school, you're working during the breaks, because especially when you have a kid that disturbed and disruptive, that you're constantly having to clear the room and babysitting them until they're calmed down, which could take hours. You have to make up all that work. You have to still have the data and do all that. And then you have to give grades. And then you have to send out progress reports on how they're meeting their goals. I mean, it's a lot.
Sounds like
It's a lot of work.
These kind of interviews are always difficult because I know it's a delicate topic because we all know that there are kids that really, really struggle. And we also know that even the kids with the really, really intense, violent behaviors, they're very miserable and unhappy kids on the inside. So I don't want anybody to hear that we're blaming the kids. It's really, it's just so important that as adults, we really think through what we're setting up kids that already have these really intense challenges, like what trajectory are we placing them on? And so I just hope that people that hear this, whatever position you're in to help, that you just, if everybody can do their part, if it's a parent that has a kiddo like this, that, they could really think about maybe am I really, really making sure I'm teaching my kid that it's not okay to beat the teacher up, the attitudes, and for admin to the extent that they have the ability to support their teachers. I just hope that it's a fresh reminder for them, to really, really have their teachers back and don't pick on the silly things when they have so much going on. And
exactly.
Yeah,
because they'll do that. They'll walk through your room and you're supposed to have this posted and the objectives and all this stuff. And that's just not important, not in the classroom I'm in. What's important to me is making sure we stay alive and we don't end up in a hospital or dead. And I think the one important thing, though, is we need to work as a team. So when we have a kid like that, the parents, the teacher, the admin, we all need to be on the same side, doing the same things in the behavior intervention plan for it to work. And there has to be some consequences, because the child's not going to learn. If there's no consequences for their bad behavior and they can just continue to manipulate adults to get what they want, that's not fixing the problem. Eventually, this kid's going to grow up. Eventually, he's going to realize that in a world, they're not going to feel sorry for you. They don't care what childhood you had. If you come to work, if you come late to work, you cuss people out, you beat up your coworker, or you call your boss an effing, whatever, you're going to end up getting fired. If you threaten people, like daily, this kid threatened to kill me in the Paris. He was going to burn down the school. He was going to kill us. He would say that like every day. He said it once in front of the principal that he was going to come and burn down the school. And he had a plan. He was talking what he needed to go get and bring. And the principal didn't care. He didn't take it seriously. He just, he's just saying that because he's angry. Well, you never know. The thing is, in the real world, you can't behave like that and have a job and earn a living. The only way, if you behave like that, you're going to become a criminal. You're going to be either selling drugs or doing all kinds of bad things and hurting other people. I mean, that's just the facts of life. The kids have to learn that there's consequences.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Elaine. This has been really good. And I'm just glad that you could be a voice for special education teachers, because I know so many are terrified to speak plainly about the lack of consequences, the lack of parenting, and the insane pressures that admin is putting on them. It's just, there's so much fear within the teaching profession. So even if sometimes we have to take heat for telling the truth, I'm glad that people can feel represented by your story, because I know that I've gotten so many comments and emails and messages from special education teachers that wish that they could tell the truth. So thank you so much, Elaine. We really
appreciate you so much, Trish. And I love your show. And I got, you're like a movie star to me, and you look great.
Thank you
Anyways, I'm so glad to be a part of your show, and God bless your show because we need it. We teachers need this.
Thank you so much.
much.
And audience,
Okay.
thank you for watching. If you want to interview with me, you can email me at teachertherapytrish@gmail.com. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.